just one more minute. Thanks everybody for getting your seats. Can we, I'd like to just start by having people who came in late yesterday who didn't introduce themselves, just give their name and city. So if you could raise your hand if you were one of those folks.
Good morning. I'm Peter Eckert from the Illinois Public Institute in Chicago.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Reynoso, and I'm with Living Cities from New York City.
Okay, good morning. We're going to start today by doing our NNIP Network Awards. And first, we're going to do the Network Steward of the Year Award, which recognizes an individual's outstanding contributions to NNIP's peer learning network. And this is someone who has achieved one or more of the following goals, including strengthening connectivity among partners, increasing knowledge sharing in the network, and helping to raise the profile of the network. And I'm very happy to have Noah, who nominated this year's award winner, and he is going to come up and say some of the wonderful ways in which she contributed to the network and deserves this award.
Great, thank you, Rob. So, as December came around and the award nominations rolled out, I knew that I actually had to submit someone this time because I'm on the executive committee. I led a cross-site project, and it was probably time to put all of that surreptitious stalking monitoring that I do as part of those roles to good use. So I sat down and started mapping out all of the different connections and all of the different activities I'd monitor, the people who are doing them, people who are contributing to the network, and very, very rapidly, all of those connections started looping back, or a lot of them started looping back to one specific person. This person was extraordinarily heavily involved in the network throughout the course of the year. They helped plan a wonderfully successful meeting and also presented at others. They helped facilitate multiple webinars and sessions outside of the meetings that helped inform activities that partners were interested in learning more about. They supported partners through multiple projects, helping them out with requests, including our own project for the Office of Minority Health, and they also were very helpful in helping out New Orleans with some of the challenges they were facing on similar projects as well. And then they also didn't just help the network internally, but externally. They talked about the network at conferences with other organizations that were looking to learn more about NNIP, both in cities that had current NNIP partners and cities that didn't. And all of that, to me, demonstrates a fantastic example of network.
Thank you so much, Noah. That was very kind for you to nominate me and for all those kind things you said. In some way, I'm very honored to receive this award, but in some ways it feels a bit ironic because I feel like I'm constantly learning from you all. And this is an amazing network. There's so much knowledge amongst us all that everyone so freely shares. We all build on each other's work and make each other smarter and help each other prepare for what's coming. So thank you all for what you've given back to us, and thank you again for this award.
Okay, so our next award is the G. Thomas Kingsley Impact Award, and Kathy will introduce the award and its winner.
Thanks. Thanks so much to Sharon. I was saying that NNIP, really there's some people that have made a permanent mark on how the network works and the directions we take, and Sharon is one of them. So I'm here to talk about the G. Thomas Kingsley Impact Award, which recognizes an organization for the contributions they made in using neighborhood data to improve local policy and practice to benefit people with low incomes. So it honors the legacy of Tom Kingsley, which some of you don't know. He was the founding director of NNIP and passed away this January. He was a real champion for the importance of neighborhoods, the potential for the impact of data, and was constantly pushing all of us to tell better stories about the difference that we were making. So I'm happy to announce, I'm going to have a different strategy than Noah and just tell you. I'm happy to announce that this year's winner is the Center on Urban Poverty and Community Development at Case Western Reserve University for their work in demonstrating the impact of housing conditions and neighborhoods on children's school readiness. And Cleveland is the birthplace of NNIP, so it must be a Cleveland sort of morning, Cindy. And Tom would have been really, really happy to honor Claudia, April, and their team. One of the first stories was actually Claudia's influence on showing the spatial mismatch in well-filtered work in late 90s. So I feel like we've come full circle. So the Case Western team used their integrated data system to track children's addresses month by month from birth to age 5, and demonstrated that living in poor quality housing units that are tax delinquent, owned by speculators, can lead to lower literacy scores for kindergartners. So this is a really amazing finding and work that was built really over decades of investment in data development and in relationships with the advocacy groups. It raised the visibility of the scale of the lead problem. So 4 in 10 children have been exposed to lead by the time they enter kindergarten in Cleveland, so they could document the scale of it. They had immediate policy impact. The city, which used to just be reactive, waiting for kids to be poisoned, is now doing a proactive rental registry and ensuring that the buildings are inspected every 4 years. And April and her team are working to make that open data so that families looking for rental housing will be able to see that information. And long-term references that Leah spoke to said they were really shifting the way that people who were worried about child well-being were thinking beyond family to housing and to neighborhoods. So I'm very pleased to offer this award to April, who will be accepting on behalf of her team.
We are so thrilled to receive this award. I am personally terrified of this exact type of scenario. And that's because I always get to represent such a large team at the Poverty Center and other amazing people in their work, and I'm a small part of that. And as Sharon said, we get to learn so much from this network, so it means so much to receive this. And we have comments from Claudia that are much more eloquent than mine that Rob will play for you. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry that I cannot be there in person to accept the G. Thomas Kingsley Award for Impact. On behalf of the team at the Center on Urban Poverty and Community Development, I want to thank NNIP for this high honor. In this first meeting following Tom's passing, I want to particularly reflect on one of his teachings, that targeted data in combination with community engagement can bring solutions to scale. In our case, we used integrated data to broaden the understanding of childhood lead poisoning from a health problem to a problem embedded in many systems. Most importantly, this has mobilized action to tackle the problem at its source, the low-quality private rental market and the very large proportion of low-income families that have to seek shelter in that market. With our community partners, we are putting the pieces in place to assure lead safety in the affordable rental market and steer families into lead-safe housing. Data on properties, landlords, families, and children will continue to be key in driving these solutions to scale. We know this is the NNIP way, and we are grateful every day for the support of this amazing network. To everyone gathered in Atlanta, keep up the great work, and see you next time in Los Angeles. Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry that I cannot be there in person to accept the G. Thomas Kingsley Award.
Okay, congratulations to the award winners this year, and we'll take a short break and start our showcase at 9:30.
Thank you, everyone.
Rob. Hello. Good. How are you this morning? Hold on a second. Rob has done something strange to the computer. Rob. I'll be back in a minute. Something is, the mouse isn't tracking.
I know. This is your laptop. I don't know why it's my problem.
It was working until you came up here.
Oh, so you're saying I busted it?
Yeah, so I'm wondering what happened.
I didn't do anything to it.
But you just got it to work. How did you?
I don't know. I just put my finger on it until it worked. Maybe try restarting it.
Well, why is it presenting on that screen?
I don't know. That's how you set it up.
That's not true.
Well, I didn't set it up like that.
I went through all the presentations.
Well, I had to play that video. You were supposed to click the video.
No, sir. Also, it's clicking, Rob.
Give me this.
No, it's working fine now. After I restarted it. The presentation views were switched, so it was only tracking the mouse on that screen versus like on my home screen because of some setting that was changed. Caroline wanted to make changes to her slides right now. We have to go find her. I don't think so, but if it does, just click. I didn't click through all of the. Can I check? What? No. I'm gonna pull all of the chairs up here. Nick doesn't have a choice.
Yeah, dude, we're getting cozy, man. Just deal with it.
I might be too terrified to speak or breathe.
But he also might start rapping.
I might also go and interpretive dance. Yes.
We're going to present for 2 minutes and then do a coordinated interpretive dance for the remaining 3.
We'll do a group karaoke session, just everyone over here. We'll do Toto.
Maybe I'll do that for my last night.
Africa.
Before I leave.
The racism. Racism in all of
When are you leaving Urban?
Racism.
I mean, one day in the future.
Got it.
That's
how rumors get started.
I know. If I coordinated a karaoke session instead of an egg night, what Kathy and Leah's reaction would be. I think
she's like, it's too sober for this. And I'm like, I'm not saying that, I didn't put that as a qualifier. I didn't say we had to be. I just said we could do a karaoke version. You do whatever you gotta do to be ready.
Dude, you got the one karaoke out of me for my entire life.
No, we're going again. We're going again because Charles is back.
So early.
Charles is back.
Practicing
We're
this
going
morning
again.
was crazy.
We're gonna
Yeah,
sing Righteous Brothers again. Crush it.
Hello, everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute. Last minute coffee, water. Take your seats. Okay, good morning. It is time for round 2 of our NNIP showcase. Again, these are 5-minute quick presentations. We're gonna have a Q&A at the end. I'll allow all the speakers to wrap up anything they don't get to if their timing starts going crazy. So be thinking of questions the entire time they're presenting. But we have 4 presenters this morning. We had a lot of interest in showcases, so if everyone could get ready, buckle up, it's going to be exciting. We're going to start with our San Antonio partner. Mehvish Siddiqui is going to come up and present on municipal elections. Yeah, it's happening. Okay.
Maybe you should vibrate because it's your first meeting and you're doing this.
So we decided to do our showcase presentation on an upcoming data spotlight in our newsletter. It's about municipal elections of Bexar County. So there's a lot of discussion on voter turnout decreasing in local elections. So we thought we should map voter turnout from 2015 versus 2017 and see how it's actually looking like for the county and where changes might need to be made. To give everybody a little background, 2017 mayoral election was highly sought after. Our current mayor, Ron Nirenberg, was the first person to defeat an incumbent mayor of San Antonio. One of our collaborators, SA 2020, it's a local initiative to help drive and progress throughout the city, and voter turnout was one of their indicators as part of the civic engagement to increase voter participation. So they track mayoral election. However, they only track San Antonio municipal elections, and we did all of county data. So we typically see higher turnout around non-Hispanic whites, higher income, and people with higher education, as our Portland NNIP partner showed. So some demographic groups vote in higher numbers as opposed to others. So knowing that bit of info, we wanted to know how are these characteristics distributed geographically. So we mapped out demographics by zip code and election data by election precincts. When we look at educational attainment, we see south of Bexar County, 16% or higher of the population in each zip code has an education less than high school, whereas 16% of or higher in the north side has a bachelor's degree or higher. We mapped out the percentage of minority by zip code, and we see a higher percentage of minorities concentrated towards the center of the county. So this is percent population other than non-white Hispanics. You see darker shades towards the center of the county, which represents a higher percentage of population in poverty. And here we see lighter shades that have zip codes with a lower per capita depicted towards the south side of the county. Now we're looking at election precincts. So these maps will have a diverging color ramp. Light represents a decrease, and a darker shade represents an increase. So we saw mainly either an increase of 10% or more, or 2 to less than 10% change in the number of registered voters throughout the county, but also towards the south side. And this, despite the significant increase in voter registration, the percent ballot cast shows a decrease of 10% or more around the south side. So we see somewhat of a similar pattern in voter turnout. However, in the north side, there's still geographic clusters of zip codes with a decrease in voter turnout. We went ahead and mapped out the change in percentage points to see how much of a difference there is, and it's somewhat the same geographically with a change of less than 2 percentage points. And this is a side-by-side depiction of poverty status and the percent change in voter turnout. So centrally, there's a higher concentration of population in poverty, but those same areas, we see an increase of voter turnout. So our data depicts an interesting story of how the areas of the county that didn't have the characteristics we talked about earlier still had improvements in registered voters, percent ballots cast, and voter turnout. So this means that we're seeing a growing number of registered voters. However, there's still work to be done, and our data illustrates where it needs to be done. Now we just need to get voters to actually vote. That's it.
Great, just need to get registered voters to actually vote. If anyone has any ideas, that's my first question in Q&A. So next we're going to have Caroline Bhalla present from USC. Let me pull up his presentation.
Good morning. I'm really excited to share with you the Neighborhood Data for Social Change platform. My name is Caroline Bhalla, and I'm from the Sol Price Center for Social Innovation at the University of Southern California. So last time we talked, we didn't have this website yet. We launched on October 30th after a 5-year community engagement process. With the MDSC, you can do things like create your own neighborhood and aggregate the data to that neighborhood. We have a focus on context. So for every piece of data, we have a Learn More section, and we also use data stories to really highlight trends in the neighborhood. So we launched on October 30th with a big party and some media attention, and we've had a growing number of users ever since. But we're really trying to focus on how to grow our usership and get people to know more about the site. The site is not just an open data portal with everything you could possibly imagine. It's not the place where you type in the word health and you get 50,000 indicators. It's well curated. So we're trying to help you make better choices and change in your neighborhood. So we have organized the data around policy areas. Every time we release a piece of data, we contextualize it. So we say, here's the data, why does this matter? So we try to give you context for each piece of data. So here's average commute time, for example. And we have a student that makes these beautiful graphics, and we send them out into the world. So data stories is what we talked to you about last time, and that's really using visualizations, pictures, maps to tell stories about interesting trends we find either in neighborhoods or around data. And these come out every 2 weeks, and we partner with local community groups to help tell their stories using our data. So for example, here we tell a story about Boyle Heights, which is a neighborhood in Los Angeles, and how those residents face significant obstacles to home ownership. And we were able to use local data to supplement our general data. We also use data stories to highlight research we're doing at the Center for Social Innovation. So we've done work on opportunity or disconnected youth, which is kids from 18 to 24 who are neither in the workforce nor in school. And so we tell a story about where those folks are clustered in Los Angeles. But the thing we're probably most excited about is the community trainings. And so this is something that I learned at the Furman Center, shout out to Maxwell, where we would do community trainings all over New York City and at NYU. We do them all over Los Angeles and at USC. This is one of our students. So turns out the students really like analyzing data and making maps, but they also like talking to community members and showing them how to use the data portal. So we have trained our students to be the trainers, and they go out into the field and talk about how to use NDSC. Here's a couple of photos from our trainings, and we, try to spice it up a little bit. It really is just a computer lab with a bunch of people. But we have so far done, I want to say, 10 trainings since we launched October 30th. We have a waiting list. We partner with neighborhood councils to get the word out, and community groups in Los Angeles who have networks so that they can learn about neighborhood data for social change, and more importantly, they can learn how to use it. So another way that we've tried to get the word out is we have entered ourselves into a competition, which is called LA 2050, and it is 100,000 Angelinos trying to shape the future of LA. And well, right now you can go on the website and see we're one of 120 people who have entered the competition. But Los Angeles, they're basically, people are going to vote on it. So even if we don't win, it's a great way to get our name out there and show how you can leverage neighborhood data to activate local change. So that's the language that we're trying to use around the data that we are sharing with our recently launched neighborhood data for social change. And finally, please take out your Twitter and follow us at NDSC_LA every time. Seriously, take out your Twitter. And every time we release a new data set, when we have a community training, when we have a data story, we send it out via the Twitter, and we would love to have more followers. Thank you.
And this is just a plug for camp, but I've seen several sessions talking about different models for community engagement and bringing data back to communities and data ownership. So it sounds like those would be some strategies to talk about since you have a wait list for your trainings. Next, we have our Portland partners. So we have Nick Chun and Randy Morris presenting on an open data portal.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? All right. So we'd like to briefly talk about the integration of our CCAN open data platform. And one of the things that brought this about was the fact that we're sort of behind. We have a pretty good indicators program, but we've been struggling to become a data intermediary. So first I would like to introduce my colleague Nick. He holds the fate of millions in his hands as Oregon Population Forecast Program Manager, and he works for the Population Research Center at PSU. And I'm Randy Morris, the Community Geography Coordinator at Institute for Portland Metropolitan Studies. In our efforts to meet the standards set as NNIP partners in data intermediary facility, we spent the last year researching options for data management and sharing. After getting a solid recommendation from Bob Gradick and his fellow data junkies in Pittsburgh, we decided to partner with OpenGov to help us build a CCAN-based Northwest Open Data Exchange, or NODE. We decided to try, oh, wow. Yeah, that's why you got it. Whoa, what? Okay, so it's been great. We partnered with lots of people. I'm not sure what's going on here. It's great. We've used the harvest. Oh man, this is all off.
To 10 seconds?
Yeah, apparently. But the no. Seriously. The thing that we're most excited about, the thing that's supplied the most functionality for us is the API. It's actually allowed us to automate and turn dynamic a lot of the hard-coded charts and graphs that we've been using in our indicators pages for a number of years now. So we're very excited about that, and the fact that the API itself is what's allowed us to expand our efforts around neighborhood indicators from approximately 120 fully developed neighborhood profiles. By the end of the summer, we'll have over 400 in the entire metropolitan statistic area around Portland. This capability has also opened up the ability for us to partner with community organizations, and this is what we consider our flagship opening partnership. This is Street Roots. They're a local homeless activist organization, and they provide what's essentially the best 211 data in the area, but it's not in digital form. And by partnering with us and students at our institution, we'll see that in digital form very soon. Sorry for that.
Hello, everyone. I'm here to talk about the Social Vulnerability Index that you see here, which is a composite variable of 7 socioeconomic indicators, and it represents the average rank of vulnerability for an area given the study area. We wanted to make the data reproducible, accessible to the public, and allow them to use it for community empowerment that's available on Node. The indicators are grabbed from the Census ACS, and it's the share of the dependent population, bachelor's degree, and the share of white non-Hispanic, which are negatively weighted, unemployment, disability, as well as cost burdenness for renters and homeowners. Our method is fairly straightforward and simple. It's not really that complex. It really is. It begins with data transformations to normalize the distributions, and then we normalize them into z-scores, filtering for multicollinearity and high associations, and checking for sampling error, finally producing an unweighted average. And so here's the results of the index at the state level for Oregon by census tract, with less vulnerable areas in green and more in brown. However, as many of you know, static maps are inflexible and are relevant to a specific set of assumptions, which is the opposite of what we want. We don't want our data to be shoved in a report, lost in the bottomless pit of the internet. And so one of the ways that we're trying to make the data more usable is to have our layer available for multiple geographic scales. And this means having the score relative to the state, the MSA, or even a particular city at the tract or neighborhood level. And so here's a map of the Portland MSA, and you can see for the city of Portland a bit of a tale of two cities going on, separated by the 205 highway. And often these indices are created and visualized on a map, but they're really never accessible or open or subject to scrutiny. And so we developed a web application for people to explore the data and understand the components that feed into their profile and have access to the data through Node. It's a passion project currently, and so we're looking for ways to weight our variables, allow users to pick and choose their own variables for their index, and ideally not choose a color scheme that's not quite so on the nose. So if you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to contact us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So some presentations across the board, and to round that out, we have Seema Iyer from our Baltimore partner talking about strategic planning.
I told the urban folks that we could talk about all kinds of great things that were going on in Baltimore, and they said, well, why don't you spend a little bit of time looking under the hood of our organization. We're an old organization. We're one of the first NNIP partners, and we put out the city's vital signs report. We have about a year-long lag, so we put out the 16th edition of Vital Signs, even though we're an 18-year-old organization. You can see that we've had hiccups and growing pains since we started in 2000. We were a standalone entity within our Association of Grant Makers, and we moved over to the University of Baltimore in 2007, and I've been the project manager since 2011. In 2012, when I came there, I thought we should do a strategic planning process, but we didn't have a whole lot of money, and so we used the public history as a way to kind of look at what we've been doing for the last 10 years at the time, and really reconstituted who we were engaging with. Our member institutions on our advisory committee include other higher educational institutions, nonprofits, city agencies, and community-based organizations. So in 2012, we came together with 5 key goals that we wanted to achieve over the next 5 years, and that was 2017. So this is about research and development of the neighborhood indicators themselves, coordination, really focusing on sustainability, social media, and engagement. So just to give you a brief overview of what we were able to accomplish in the last 5 years, we really looked at our data as a shared measurement system. Kindergarten readiness was something that we never tracked before, healthy food availability, things that other people in the region could use with our data. And looking at greater access to small area data like the USPS vacancy data that we never used before, the housing choice voucher utilization, and then really focusing in on two things around water quality and arts and culture. For sustainability, we really focused in on energy efficiency. We have a whole suite of data and research that we did around energy efficiency, including our Connecting People to Place that we worked on when it was a cross-city project. And then, of course, in terms of engagement, we host Baltimore Data Day every year. We've grown in terms of our Facebook and Twitter usage, and we really put together a BINA in the classroom and looking at ways to educate people on training other people on how to use our data. This is kind of the breadth, I think, of the kinds of people that we reach. We focus in on the community groups and interested citizens. We want to make sure that people are engaged in a broad kind of neighborhood focus. We keep making our data website better and better. This is an interactive way to look at trends and indicators over time by different neighborhoods, and I welcome you to take a look at our website anytime. Last year, we launched our Esri Online Open Data Portal for all of our data, so now it's an API that anybody can use. So in the last 5 years, we've done a lot of work, and it was absolutely driven by that 2012 strategic planning process. So in 2017, lots of things have changed. Not only have we kind of done all this work, but the kind of local landscape has changed. So what's new now after 2017? Our staff has grown. We grew double, which doesn't seem like a huge staff, but that is pretty big when you grow double. We've got a new governor. In Maryland, we have a Republican governor, which is kind of like hell freezing over. And we have a new mayor in 2016. 2015, we had a lot of uprisings, and we're now in the area of fake news. So we used our 2017 strategic planning process to really ask staff what they wanted to do to really hone in on the schools that we have. You can see they want more time, they want to be able to tell more stories, use more graphics, and then we used our advisory to look at our strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. We have some strengths, which is good. We've got good trust, we've got a good brand, we have good use of technology, and we have local influence. Our weaknesses, of course, is that not everybody knows about who we are. We're always, like many of you, are probably looking for resources. We have that lag, right? Our data comes out a year after, and people are like, oh, I can have all this real-time information. How come you guys can't do that either? In terms of opportunities, obviously technology for us is an opportunity. Looking at things that are local and grassroots, especially after the uprising, and looking at new organizations that are kind of operating in Baltimore, and looking at this idea of training, do the trainer of the trainer. But in terms of threats, this is probably true for all of you. The narrative around urban neighborhoods, I think people don't understand really what urban neighborhoods truly are or what they potentially could be. Data misuse, data security is a problem, the political landscape. And so here are our 2017 goals. We want to be, at the core is the living data, constantly looking for data on the prowl, place informed decision making, creating an alliance of data champions, and demonstrable impact. And our new tagline is that we want to be the local experts nationally known. We know Baltimore because of this data that we put out every year, the Vital Signs Report, and we want to make sure that people nationally know that when they come to Baltimore, they're not coming to us just to look for data, they're coming to us to learn about Baltimore itself. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we have a few minutes for Q&A, but I first selfishly have some questions, so feel free to jump in. But I wanted to pass it to Portland to hear a little bit more from all of our partners. We heard a lot about partnerships and how those, like how work has helped partnerships, how you've used community partners to get the word out about your work, or in some cases to learn more about how your organization is perceived. But I wanted to hear a little bit more about the partnerships and kind of the role or the goals that you have for Node as far as facilitating some of those.
Sure, is this thing on? Okay. So we had a couple goals with Node. Because we're a university institute, one of the things we've noticed is the siloing. I'm sure everybody knows about the siloing. And for the last year and a half, 2 years, yeah, I saw that. Thank you for taking the heat off me. For the last couple of years, one of the constant refrains around campus is nobody shares their data, nobody shares their research. I mean, of course it happens, but it doesn't happen to the level that's the utopia in everybody's minds, and not even close. So one of our goals in getting this going was to actually make this an open data exchange first and foremost in phase 2 for the researchers and institutes and colleges in the campus, to try to get people to recognize that their data doesn't have to just vanish or become sort of a static data set attached to a research paper or thesis or something like that. We can actually integrate it and get it permanently accessible to everybody. And we've gotten a lot of great response on that. We've had several labs and institutes sign on immediately, and they're talking about writing us into their grants for the data management in their grant proposals. We've got a partnership with the PSU Research Library to share sort of our capabilities and their capabilities, so we're not stepping on each other's toes. We can provide them a dynamism to the data that they can't with their current archive system. So that was one of our big things. The other thing is we really wanted a two-way data exchange. We didn't want to just provide purely curated data. We do that. We have some great facility with Greater Portland Pulse and Neighborhood Pulse to provide internally curated data. But what we wanted was to get neighborhoods and people and communities to actually become the researchers as well. And the researchers at PSU can facilitate that, but as long as people feel like the only data that's valid is coming out of the institutions, then I think they feel disempowered. So that's one of our goals, is to provide that platform for people to make their own stories through data, and we'll help them in whatever way possible. And that's the big thing with the Street Roots project, is this is a very, very influential organization around the city, but not seen as a data influencer. And so we're trying to turn their Rose City Resource Guide into something that's usable by everybody, usable by the service providers in a more dynamic way. And so far it's been very successful.
Great.
Nick has a different association with partners, so I don't think he wants to talk about that. State level, okay.
Okay, any other questions out there? Oh, John.
Hi, Mehvish. I was wondering if you could expand a little bit on not only how did you decide to do the local elections as opposed to other elections, and if you could give a little bit more context around what exactly is happening here. So for instance, are these partisan or nonpartisan? Are they also combined with gubernatorial, or are they only local? Do you typically see ballot measures, or is it just candidates? Things like that to help us give a little bit more of the context of what's going on with these.
The elections were actually from 2015 versus 2017, and they were local municipal elections. As far as context, we did see a different turnout, I guess you would say, but we're starting to see an increase in voter turnout in San Antonio. I think someone else can probably expand on that if she wants to.
Caroline, I couldn't believe when you said you do those stories every 2 weeks, which feels mind-boggling to me. Sort of, is it students, like, how do you do the production, just the practical piece of getting both the data and the context ready? That often feels like a heavy load. So.
Yeah, so Megan Goulding over there, she is the project manager on the data stories. She works with 2 students, and they meet weekly to go through ideas, and we have a calendar built out for the next maybe 6 months or so. It changes, right? If something comes up, bubbles to the surface, but yeah, so she has usually 2 or 3 in the queue, and yeah, it's a pretty heavy lift.
Other questions?
I have a quick follow-up. You said that there was a lot of interest from community partners. Were those relationships, are those longstanding relationships, or have they come into being with this project?
I'd say it's both. So the steering committee that we pulled, so over the years, we met with folks all over Los Angeles in a group called Common Data LA, and those people were from city, county, nonprofits, for-profits. I mean, just try to run the gamut to get the word out there. And Urban was a partner in convening the very early ones of those meetings. Those people became our steering committee, and so we continued to engage them as we launched the project. But as we go into the neighborhoods, we're finding more people to partner with. So it's both.
One last question from Jay.
I have a question for Seema. So in the past 16 years, you've seen change in the local data landscape. How do you get prepared to respond to those changes?
I mean, obviously, that's a very deep question, because I think that's what we all have to do constantly. And the way that I have been able to do it is really use the data to be the early warning signs of what's coming forward. If you think, and that's the interesting thing about calling it the vital signs, you know, we have literally a stethoscope on every one of our neighborhoods. And those early warning signs really do drive what we see coming forward. So we knew, and doing strategic planning, I can't you know, emphasize enough really taking the time to understand what your staff wants, what your alliance sees you as being a good partner in doing, and really listening to what that is saying to you. So using the data, using your you know, advisory groups, using your staff skills, and making sure that you're honing in on your staff skills and not trying to, you know, square peg round hole. But, you know, I will say it is different this time. You know, after the uprisings in Baltimore, I think there's a lot of people in Baltimore and maybe in some of the other cities like St. Louis that really want to do things differently, you know, and we're still there. So how do we, you know, say that we're going to support difference, but we've actually been trying to be different the whole time. You know, the early warning signs about what Baltimore needed have been the same almost. You know, what Mike was saying yesterday, the dividing line has been there for a long time. That's true in Baltimore too. And I think our data has constantly been trying to say that. We have to come up with better ways to say it, and obviously build partnerships to do that truly. So it's a little bit of everything.
Great. We have time for one more question.
Yeah, I'm going to squeeze in one more from Susan.
Hi. So this is another question for LA and in general for people that are doing data stories. When we're using the data, there's a tendency for the data, especially when you're working with vulnerable populations, to tell what's wrong about a neighborhood. How do you work with the data stories to get the message about what's right?
That's a great question. Pardon me. So yeah, we really try to focus on community assets too, and so we're trying to measure things like social connectedness and how people are civic actors in their neighborhoods. So that's one of the ways that community groups are really helpful to us, because they tell positive stories. So we recently did one on like access to green space, and we always try to end the story with what people are doing to, if it's a problem, to solve that problem. So there's either a message of hope or next steps embedded in each one of the stories.
Great, thank you. If everyone could give our presenters a round of applause.
We have a short break for 10 or 15 minutes until we get to the next panel.
Array of different, yeah, it is.